The setup of Trinnov is non-intuitive and is also hard to see. The difference between the normal UI where you can do configuration and the one you can do configuration is the appearance of this one small button. And so I thought I'll just make a video that goes through the initial setup process. For the setup, you need the Trinnov and the calibration mic. Although it's possible to set it up without the calibration mic, you can go to the processor tab and set up the delays manually. It is not the path I have taken, and the calibration mic makes it a lot easier. You also need a computer if you're planning to use remote desktop to connect it. So the first step is to physically connect the Trinnov, connect the speakers. Unlike traditional receivers, you can connect to any of the XLR inputs. And I connected my mains starting from 1, and I connected the subwoofers in the reverse order starting from 16 backwards. You need to hook up your network cable, your calibration mic, power, HDMI. If you have more than 4 connections that you need, then the ones you frequently use, I suggest connecting it from 1 through 4 because the remote can only directly switch between 1 and 4. For the rest of it, you'll have to cycle through and select it. There are 2 ways to connect to your Trinnov. One is physically by connecting the monitor and a keyboard mouse to the Trinnov because it is in the end a computer, or you can find the IP address and connect to it through that way. We'll be using the IP address way of doing it, and there are 2 ways to figure out the IP. The first one is figuring out the IP from your router. There should be a device called Trinnov connected to it, and you can get the IP off it. I suggest at this time also switching it from dynamic IP to static IP so that the Trinnov will always use that exact same IP, and then later on when you connect through your browser, you know what IP address to use. And that is what I have done here. I have set mine to given it a static IP that ends in 4. To find out the IP address from the Trinnov, click on the setup, select network, and then go into the network page. The UI is a little bit interesting. I think they probably reused the software from some console that had a much smaller display, because as you keep turning, the values appear on the screen. This could be confusing in the beginning because they have a lot of screen space that is empty, and you won't see an IP address till you start turning it because it only shows 3 at a time. But the screen actually has space for lots more, which makes me think they just reused the software from something else which had a much smaller display. To remote desktop, you would need the password, which is the serial number of your Trinnov. If you look at the rear, you should get your serial number from there, or you can go to the about on the display and get it from there too. In this example, the serial number is the one that starts from the 0, so it is 000126. You can ignore the ALS dash part of it. All you need is the 6-digit number. To remote into your Trinnov, you would need a VNC software. Tiger VNC is a free software, so you can go to this website and download it. Start the VNC viewer, give the IP address of your Trinnov, give the password, which is your serial number, and connect to it. From here on out, just follow the Trinnov setup, and they explain on how to map the channels to your speakers and the rest of the calibration stuff. I only had this initial trouble of how do I get to the place where I could follow their video, so that part is covered now. Couple of notes on things I found surprising. When you turn on a Denon or a Marantz or an Anthem, on your screen you would see a screenshot of the device. You would see an Integra screen coming up. There's nothing like that on the Trinnov, so it is hard to tell have you hooked up your HDMI cables correctly. You need, like, to see something on the screen, something has to go from your video player to the screen. So that means you have to get two of your connections correct too. Otherwise, you would kind of be left guessing which connection is having a problem. Is it the problem between your DVD player to Trinnov, or is it a problem from Trinnov to your projector? I found that a bit surprising. Trinnov is quite slow to start up, so when you hit the power button, it needs to boot, and it takes a while. It's all software, so it needs to start up. It's like starting a computer. And then when you switch channels, or even when the content within the channel switches, you lose audio for a few seconds. For example, if you're watching Hulu, which through with ads in it, when it switches to the ad, there's a switch in audio track. So you would lose a few seconds of audio, and then when you get back to your content again, you'll miss a few seconds of an audio. That to me, I find it unacceptable for any receiver. So I'm kind of surprised that the Trinnov is not fast when it comes to switching. And have fun. Trinnov's calibration, I think, is the best I have seen. All I did was set up the mic in the primary seating area. You would need a mic stand, and you might also need one of those bubble levelers to make sure that your mic is pointing perfectly straight up. But I only did calibration one time, and the sound is awesome. When I compare that to Anthem, where it makes you take 5 measurements, and I had to do it many times, and it did not sound as I couldn't get it as good as I like the Trinnov, and Anthem also hung a few times on me. Mm. So from a pure calibration point of view, just run through once, and you're kind of set.